listening to Living with ADHD and CPTSD, available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Today's CPTSD episode. I've noticed something recently out in public when I've been talking about things like mental health and trauma, is that I'm always discovering that there are more people out there who don't know in the moment that they actually have CPTSD and suffer from trauma and triggers. They just don't know how to identify and understand what's going on. A lot of this is common, I'm sure, because so many people out there often wonder what is going on with themselves, why they're having so many issues, why they keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again, why they keep making the same choices when it comes to things like relationships and job choices and friends and such. And they don't truly understand and know where to look in order to stop this from repeating itself throughout their life. I have a friend of mine, and I'm not going to reveal any information of them, of course, because I respect people's privacy, who I was talking about, things like my ADHD and dealing with trauma, and we started talking about her problems that she had dealt with and talking about, a parent that was constantly dominating conversations, wasn't really or didn't appear to care about what she was thinking or going through or her opinions. And it had been revealed that she had been through this since she was young, like a child. And what this had caused her to end up becoming is someone who was always working hard and trying to live up to a person's expectations, but yet never really got acknowledged. It like all the hard work and all the effort and everything put into trying to impress the parent, and it doesn't really help. It didn't make her go all of a sudden one day going, oh, wow, I'm so proud of you. You've done such a great thing, like it was like it was ignored. All she really wanted to care about was her own self. And so over the next, 30 minutes or so, while we were discussing back and forth, it was discovered that it's a really good possibility that her mother is likely a narcissist, and that that she was dealing with repetitive trauma. So she has her own form of CPTSD. And I even ended up recommending her or, referring her to a therapist, a company that I'm working with from my own therapist. And she seemed, when we got through it all, she seemed to be really grateful and relieved in a way that there was some clarity about everything. And that was fantastic. And I felt really great. And it made me feel good, but at the same time, it made me kind of reflect on multiple areas in the world and within myself and just in society. And I came to a conclusion that there are a lot of people out there that are living today in this world who likely don't even know that they have CPTSD in some form or another. You know, kind of sucks because we're trying to live our lives and we're struggling with things like mental health and getting triggered and you know, why are we having such problems, you know, dealing with social issues or relationship issues? Why are we having so much anxiety when it comes to interacting with people? Or why are we so afraid to stand up for ourselves or speak out and put our, you know, our interests at the top and care about that rather than, you know, putting them aside and worrying about other people and trying to make them happy and never looking after our own needs. This is something that a lot of people deal with. Well, to be honest, they don't deal with it. They either, you know, fake things and try to work through it, and they never are successful. You know, they never get anywhere, and they end up just struggling for a lot of their adult life. And on top of it, a lot of them aren't really capable or prepared to speak up about it to anybody, let alone a therapist. Like, can you imagine if a friend of yours who you suspected, you know, you kind of are around them on a regular basis and you notice unusual behaviors that are kind of like, hey, this is really unusual. She doesn't want to do a simple act like stand up for herself, or when something really scary comes around, or, you know, socially normal for most people, and she's becoming closed off or antisocial, or she doesn't want to hang out suddenly, and they start to think that there's something going on. And so of course a good friend wants to you know, help them in some form, and they're giving them the opportunity to talk about, you know, if there's anything you want to talk about. I notice that there's some things that you're struggling with. And sometimes the friends, they don't necessarily know how to present it and how to ask the questions. And so there's a possibility that they're offending their close friends or the person that's dealing with these struggles, because maybe they interpret it as if they don't believe them, or maybe they feel that if they were to, you know, share all these feelings and all the struggles that they're dealing with, that their friend's not going to believe them. Or especially with men, right? Like a lot of men out there who were instructed or taught from an early age by their parents, especially like their father or maybe even their grandfather, to not talk about their feelings and not talk about things like mental struggles and difficulties, that they firmly believe that they don't want to talk about their struggles because it shows signs of weakness or vulnerability. And a lot of men out there have learned to not, you know, reveal or display any sort of vulnerable, you know, positioning in their life, because it's a sign of weakness and a sign that they're exposing themselves and they're not a man, right? Like you got to be a man, you got to be tough, you got to deal with it on your own, and you got to move past it and grow from it and use it as experience and a sign of character and building, getting stronger. And, there might be the odd, I don't know, 20% of men possibly that maybe are successful and they're able to get through this. But the majority of them can't. They try and they work really hard, and maybe they do things like get a workout routine and they get really strong and big and they look physically intimidating, or like they have a demeanor that they're faking, that is a confidence and brutality, or all these things that it's like a false face, right? Like a mask. They're pretending for the sake of themselves because they don't want to appear weak or vulnerable to their parents or their friends or their boss or even their girlfriend or wife, because they have these false beliefs that if they do appear as a weak or vulnerable, or they express their emotions or their concerns or their worries, that people are going to think differently of them. Maybe they won't be their friend anymore. Maybe their girlfriend will leave them, right? Like maybe the girl goes, "Oh, you're such a weakling," or you're like they're not gonna want to be with that person, that man anymore, because they don't have this appearance of a strong person who's great and capable of doing anything and controlling their life and making money, blah blah blah, right? Like there's all these different examples and little sub scenarios that you could insert into it. And so they don't ever express it, or maybe they do, but maybe it's to maybe the odd person or someone that they truly trust, or maybe the only way they can do it is they go and see a therapist, and they never tell anybody ever that they are seeing a therapist about this. And see, this is a society thing. Like, this needs to change. We need to tell, especially males, that this whole concept of not revealing your feelings and not talking about your vulnerabilities and your issues and your mental health is wrong. That needs to be thrown out, and that needs to be it needs to be scrapped. We need to stop thinking that way. We need to show them that it's okay and it's perfectly safe and normal to express how you feel and express emotions and talk about things that are going to make you vulnerable. Talk about your hurts, talk about your struggles and your fears. Express it out in the open. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones, tell your parents. Well, of course, unless they're the ones that caused it, that's not necessarily a recommended thing to do, although some may find it comforting even so. But you've got to be willing to discuss it. But at the same time, more people out there need to be open about it, need to be welcoming and comforting, and be willing to sit and listen to them. Like, especially employers. Like, there are a lot of companies out there that I'm sure don't do enough for mental health. Like, if one of their employees came up, like let's say a boss, their manager, they came up to their manager and started to express to themselves that they're dealing with some mental struggles and are having concerns, and it's affecting their work, they may be thinking that their manager's not gonna care at all, and it might even maybe like lead to them getting fired or being put on extended leave or something, instead of getting their proper care and work, like support. It's it's something that is very common out there, especially in countries like the United States, where mental health is really needs to catch up. Like there's so little focus on it that a lot of people, they still have this mentality that they shouldn't discuss their mental health or their issues and express emotions and talk about their fears and their issues that they're dealing with all the time. Like this has to change, and unfortunately it's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a new generation or two of people, with this understanding that talking about things like mental health and your issues and being vulnerable is never a bad thing, and it should be encouraged and accepted outright without any reservations. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of effort to get there, because it's one of those things that is shunned and frowned upon still by a lot of people. And I'm not about to, point to any particular location or people or groups in the United States. That's not what I'm about here. But I'm sure for my audience, there's a lot of people out there that probably already know and probably don't have to be told that there are specific groups of people out there that are really bad for it, not wanting to talk about it, or knowing that if they say anything that people are going to laugh at them or not take them seriously, or won't want to be their friends anymore, or would tell them that it's all in their head and grow up, be a man, be strong, tough it out. This isn't real, blah, blah, blah. All these stupid negative stereotypes and BS that's out there. So anyway, going more back towards what I was initially discussing, there's a lot of people out there who don't know that they're dealing with trauma and have no idea that they have CPTSD. And I'm sure that every day there are a number of people who are just discovering that they have it and are realizing now, whether it's 20, 30, 40 years later into their life, that they're dealing with repetitive trauma and that they have CPTSD, and are just learning about it and are just starting to deal with the things that are going on in their minds, and are seeking out professional help. And it seems like every day or every week, I realize another person that I know is dealing with CPTSD of some form. And it saddens me at the same time that there are so many people out there in this world that have had trauma in some form or another, whether it's in a single episode or, traumatic event, like a car crash, or witnessing, death, or like an accident that has caused somebody to die, or a traumatic event like their best friend having an overdose and nearly dying, or having to go to the hospital. Like there's all sorts of examples out there, but there are a lot of people out there, especially adults, who have dealt with repetitive childhood trauma from a very early age, abusive trauma, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and it's been repetitive, and could have been a parent, it could have been a guardian, it could have been one of their siblings, it could have been a childhood bully from school. Some even have probably had a teacher who was a bully to them, and they grew up with this, and they found a way to deal with it and to, find a safe spot or a safe zone in their life so that it wasn't overwhelming and causing serious issues at that moment. But there are a lot of adults out there who have gone through traumatic events as child on a daily basis or repetitive whenever, however, but numerous times throughout their childhood and teenage life that have CPTSD, and they don't even know that they've got it because they either haven't experienced any triggers and it's just a matter of time, or they have had these triggers and are dealing with the struggles and the anxiety and that stress and overwhelming sensation that they get whenever it appears. But they're either too afraid to talk about it and just let it sit among them privately and never really understand what is going on, and are too afraid to do anything about it. And it takes someone noticing, they have a trigger and something is seriously wrong, and they're not themselves. And it could be in the office, it could be in the lunchroom, maybe it's after work, maybe they're dealing with an addiction issue, maybe they're addicted to alcohol or drugs, or maybe there's some other form, like maybe they have to exercise all the time. Maybe they have a workout scheme that is constantly obsessive, and they have to do this in order to feel good about themselves, because otherwise, they're scared all the time. So they do the workout sessions, and they lift weights, and they get strong, and they're running all the time, and they do this as a coping mechanism. And maybe because of the fact that they don't ever talk about it to anybody, people think it's a simple, normal thing for them. But there are signs out there of constantly going every day, hours among hours, always working out, obsessing about, almost like an OCD sort of situation where all they ever want to do is go and work out because they get stronger and health and better and faster, and they're in supreme shape, and they even eat a certain diet because they've done all the research, and they go to the extremes to make sure they're eating perfectly and they're working out perfectly and their routines are absolutely perfect with no errors, and they are very careful about how they do all their routines, and people on the outside have no idea, but maybe their best friend is noticing this and is curious. Maybe in the inside of their minds, they're going, something's a little odd about this, but they never want to investigate because, especially if, like I said, if they're a man, they're too afraid to bring it up because men don't talk about their feelings and about their struggles, and they don't want to be vulnerable, especially to another male friend. And they got to get rid of this stigma. This stupid stigma about not talking about it has got to be eliminated, and they've got to get past this. But yeah, anyway, like there are other examples out there of people who are dealing with trauma that aren't necessarily traditional forms of traumatic coping. Like I said, working out is an example, but there are other things, like people who eat a lot, like who gain weight or are eating unhealthy snacks and sugar foods. They use this as a coping mechanism because it makes them feel good, right? Like they get a dopamine hit. They don't even necessarily have to have ADHD by any means, but it makes them feel good. It makes them like focus away from the hurt and the trauma and the pain that they're experiencing. So they end up eating junk food and ordering out pizza all the time, or buying takeout food, and that's all they ever do. They're losing money because they're spending money on takeout food all the time, and of course they're eating extremely unhealthy, so they're putting on a lot of weight. And if this lasts a long time, there's a real good chance that they could, develop heart disease. They could have cancer. There's all sorts of health issues that could come up. They could have a heart attack and die early because of unhealthy eating and unhealthy lifestyle, diet and habits. And the entire time, it could be all related to trauma, and they're just too scared to face up to it and talk about it with people and deal with it. And it's leading to unhealthy habits and obsessions. And then there's all sorts of examples out there of this shit that happens, and it never gets discussed because nobody ever wants to talk about it. Nobody ever feels that it's up to them, or that they should help their best friend or help someone in their family that is struggling in life. Like, there are definitely signs out there of it happening. It's not like there aren't hints and signs and symptoms of it, but most of the time nobody ever wants to discuss it. They know, and people are either too afraid to talk about it with them, or the person who is dealing with the trauma and the fears are unwilling to get help. And when you really think about it, ultimately, it is up to the person who's dealing with the trauma to do something about it. Like, it's just like any kind of addiction, alcohol, drugs, sex. Like, until the person who's doing it admits to themselves and admits to other people that they have a problem and they need to take care of it, no amount of pressure or persuasion of any sort is going to get them to change their behaviors. Because until they see for themselves that they do have a problem and they need to take care of it and it's not healthy, they're just going to deny and say, oh, you're crazy. I'm fine. I don't have a problem. Why are you so concerned about me? Just worry about your own problems. They're going to come up with all sorts of excuses to deal with it and continue on with their unhealthy habits or their dangerous routine that they're doing. And until, like, you can talk about things, you can suggest stuff, you can show them that you are concerned, that you're there for them, that if they ever want to talk, you'll listen. You're open-minded, you're all ears, whatever phrase that you want to use, you can suggest it all you want, and hopefully they will say something. Hopefully they'll talk about it eventually, but ultimately it's up to them. All you can do is just, for that person who's dealing with it, all you can do really is just be supportive and open-minded, and don't shun them. Don't don't pretend that there's nothing wrong, but don't obsess about it with them all the time, because all you're going to do, honestly, is just drive them away. Maybe they just need the right amount. Maybe it's something that will come up eventually in their life. But if you think about it, if they do decide to finally say something and they realize that they do have a problem or there is something wrong, there is a good possibility that you could be that first person that they come to talk about it with, because they see that you're concerned. They know that they've noticed that you're expressing your concerns about it. You've been willing to talk about it. You've told them that you're there for them. So they're going to feel encouraged by that. And so there's a good chance that they're going to think that you're that person that they can finally express it to, talk about it. So there are benefits of doing it. It's just that you do have to know the boundary, and you got to know when it's too far and when you need to back off sometimes. It's a fine line to dance around, but we need to be there for our friends and our loved ones, and especially our family. We need to try and help them, even if they don't want the help. Now, for someone who is struggling, in order for you to truly be ready to deal with the pain and the hurt from the trauma that you have experienced, you need to truly be ready. You need to look deep inside yourself and determine that you're ready to deal with this, that you're ready to finally say something, whether it's to your best friend or to your brother or sister or even your father or your mother, or maybe it's your boss, or maybe the only way is to actually book an appointment with a therapist and talk to them about it. Maybe that's how far you need to go. But you need to be ready. You need to go and do some self-discovery. Like open your mind up a bit and check out and see, be prepared that this is the time that you're finally willing to do what it takes to get the help. There are a lot of people out there, including myself, who are willing to sit there for hours and let you just talk about things. Express your concerns, express your fears and your worries, and get started on that road to recovery. You just have to be willing and ready to start and do what it takes. And I know that it's hard. I get it. It is very hard. This is not going to be an easy road back to, getting to be healthy again and to feel good about yourself and not have those fears, that trauma get in the way of living a happy, fun life. I get it. It's going to be hard, but we are here for you, and we can help you deal with this. It's okay. It's all right to feel the pain and to feel sad and to not feel good. You just have to know when it's time for yourself to deal with this and get the help that is deserved, that you do deserve. And there you have it. Another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. I hope this was a great episode and helpful for all of you out there listening. If you find that this kind of episode is really informative and helpful for you, then please give me a shout. Let me know what you feel and how you're thinking about this. You can get in touch with me either via email. The email address is livingwithadhdandcptsd@gmail.com. If you want to contact me on Twitter, by all means, my Twitter handle is @ADHD and CPTSD. You can also get a hold of me at Mastodon. That is a relatively new social site, kind of like Twitter. You can also go to my website, www.livingwithadhdandcptsd.ca. If you would like to help me out, whether it's donation or even becoming a member, you can go to my Patreon page. Just look for Living with ADHD and CPTSD. You can go to Ko-fi.com, that's ko-fi.com, and you can donate there any amount you feel is acceptable. It doesn't really matter. And you could also become a subscriber to Apple Podcasts, and it's a small monthly fee that you can pay to get access to episodes like this early and, other episodes that aren't available to the public. All right, everyone. That is this episode. I hope you have a great day, and I shall talk to you later. Bye, everyone.